Hey everybody, this is Petey from the Spin Rack, and today I was requested to do a crossover. And since we had a big success with Hellboy, thank you viewers for checking it out. I would like to do a video on Batman Hellboy Starman, a two-parter from DC and Dark Horse. Right? So before we get into that, I guess I'm gonna get into some history and hopefully do some more Hellboy videos since I finally got a success with one, right? But anyway, I'm gonna say this because I don't need to go on a roundabout way talking about Hellboy, but I'm just gonna do it anyway, right? Ultimately, um, when well, actually, um, Marvel, Marvel and DC creators, they were all getting together, right? Now, then Mignola and Arthur Adams were friends. Mignola was also friends with John Byrne. They were kind of all talking. Frank Miller was talking with them, Walter Simonson. And one group broke off, and the other group, they decided to put together a thing called Legend, right? Now, as they were putting these things together, um, Mike Mignola kind of had a breakthrough that he needed to do kind of his own thing, but he wasn't ready up to writing, right? So he decided, hey, he's going to get a writer, even though he had most of the plots on his own, right? So he got involved with John Byrne, right? He got involved with John Byrne. And so it kind of ties in because this is a Hellboy crossover with the next Men, right? So ultimately, he was thinking, hey, I got these ideas, I got this story plan, but maybe it needs a real writer. And since Byrne gave him the plots over the phone, he decided, let's go with Byrne, right? So Byrne was like, okay, but Byrne kind of joked with him and said, hey, these copious notes, like you'd see on, not exactly like Jack Kirby's, but he had all these notes next to the page, artists would do. And he said these notes can be in the dialogue box, all these copious notes, right? And to give you a hint of that, we'll go to the first issue, right? And in the first issue, I guess it's not here. I'm not going to go through this yet because no one requested. Here's Bravura, so we got Legend and Bravura, Power. So, and this surprised me because Mignola is a storyteller, but he kind of really brought out the Jack Kirby in his art, right? So the first letter, now there was two actual issues that came out before this, but at the same time that Byrne, or short stories that Byrne scripted that are in this edition here, The Seed of Destruction. But those weren't comic books. They were like Comic Con special edition, advanced, and I think a SCCC edition. And Byrne writes in here, his first thing, he said, Mignola's a nut. Take a gander at some of the work he's produced in the last few years. World of Krypton, Cosmic Odyssey, Farid and the Grey Mouser, Iron Wolf, Dracula, Gotham by Gaslight. Not too shabby, huh? And now Hellboy, which he asked me to script, which is why he's a nut. He's already making up the story and giving me enough liner notes that I'm only a few inches ahead of being a mere transcriber. I love working on this book. I'm taking wagers on how long it'll take before Michael realizes he can put the words in the character's mouth just as easily as I can. I bet 4 issues tops. You read it here first. John Byrne, Fairfield, Connecticut. Right? So he had that note. So he wasn't planning on, and actually, as they went on, something happened. Something big happened for Mignola while this was going on, right? So we're still not at what's the name, right? Hellboy had another crossover with Madman, right? I think Madman maybe 4. Um, Hellboy, was it Mike Allred said, hey, can I use Hellboy? He said, yes, of course. And in there he asked Mike Mignola to write the dialogue for Hellboy. So Mignola kind of looked at Madman, this book, and he was like, this is kind of wonky, right? Maybe, looking at Burns' script and saying, maybe I can kind of do something like this. And maybe even if it's not a really professional comic book, it'll be kind of a book that I want. So that's kind of how he first started thinking about scripting. But it was yet another crossover, right? So we've gotten past the initial, how he started writing it all by himself, and then what else we got here? So at the same time, he was still taking on crossovers for the book, right? So I don't have all of them, right? So, but I do have Ghost and Hellboy, right? And I think in this is a pretty good crossover. There's also a collection that you can go get, both issues of this, and this is a decent crossover. That was the first person I saw. I say, okay, this is another artist doing Hellboy, which doesn't look too bad. But then he was he was a friend to Joe Quesada, but at the same time with his event comics, he said, I shouldn't have done Painkiller Jane and Hellboy, right? So I was like, well, there's no more crossovers probably happening. But in a couple interviews, he said, hey, I would let James Robinson do whatever he wanted, right? He said he likes Starman, so he would like to work with him, and that's exactly what happened. James Robinson at this time, he was doing Starman. He was, I think was he involved with JSA? I know his books were JSA and Starman. He also was doing some freelance for Marvel. He was doing Cable. Before Joe Casey got there, James Robinson kind of settled Cable down, like got Cable back and kind of made him like a Marvel, someone within the Marvel universe. He wasn't just an X character. He kind of stabilized Cable, and then Joe Casey kind of picked up that baton and went even further with I think it's Jose Ladron. Like they had a decent run, but people kind of forget that James Robinson was also on that. So he had a lot of things kind of going for him as a writer, right? And he was kind of the name. Everyone knew he was pretty good. So Mike Mignola wanted to work with him, and I'm not sure. I think it's there's also Christopher Golden that he works with, but I'm not sure there's many writers that he worked with post this part. So let's take a look, right? I think that's as much information that I have. Right? So now James Robinson also utilized a lot of what Mike Mignola would do in the script, and so it kind of definitely feels like a Hellboy comic book. And that's why I brought up these 3 editions. These editions have basically Hellboy versus Nazis. The first of the Nazis that kind of birthed them. The sequel to this, with the Nazis on their next mission with the Wake the Devil, with Vladimir Glashkuro. And at the same time, they kind of become comic relief. And this is the last big Nazi story, the Conqueror Worm, before Hellboy goes off to being more of a creature of the night. I didn't mention Hellboy and Savage Dragon, which I believe Mignola also scripted. That was one that Mignola was okay with. I have it somewhere around here. I have no issue with it. I was reading Savage Dragon at that point. It's a fun crossover outside of Hellboy and Savage Dragon have to escape from this giant creatures behind, which is obviously a want of Eric Larson. But Mignola said working with Larson, he had a good time and that sort of thing. So I'm sorry I don't have that just to show you guys, but it was a crossover I was okay with too, right? So this kind of has a feel of a Hellboy comic book, and we see the police chasing after the Joker, right? And Batman after him also. And Batman's also a character, one of the first characters that Mignola plotted on his own. And this is why he kind of found his voice for horror, but he didn't feel that he should be doing Batman monthly. So this was kind of the guy that made him take the next step as a storyteller and becoming an artist writer, right? So we see classic Batman scene. There's all this mood. This is all the stuff that's in a Mignola comic book, and even writ large is a big kind of Marvel kind of explosion in Gotham City, right? And these mood pieces that he has in here before that happens. So those bits are in there. So obviously it's the Joker's gotten away, but the Batman has to figure out where he's at, right? So it's turning day, and of course, Batman needs some rest because it's daytime. At this point, he only worked at night. And at this point, his part of the story, you run into, Ted Knight and Bruce Wayne. Bruce Wayne, even though he's supposed to be sleeping, he's going out to see this lecture from Ted Knight, the original Starman, right? And it's one of the things. This is a definite detective comic book. So as we've gotten past the big explosions, we're gonna have some Nazi stuff in here. We're gonna have some big fights, but you see the kind of detective stuff really works with the noir type of stuff that Mignola does, or say chiaroscuro type stuff. It really works with this. And as he's giving this lecture, attacked by some Nazis, right? And they're actually skinhead Nazis, right? Or they're taken to be skinheads, right? But the Starman, the original Starman, still has some fight in them, and they're still able to stop them despite that. But then, of course, Bruce Wayne is there. Batman joins the fight, right? But Batman, is ready to handle things, but they got a little much too much power on him. They're stealing away Ted Knight, and Batman's taking care of the ones that he can. But they get away, and there's one that got left talks about October, and he dies right in front of him, and with this cool Nazi insignia behind them. That's a cool effect. So even though it's it's that same person. Not the swastika is cool, but the effect, right? So Batman is still trying to figure this out, but the signal is there, and he doesn't do too much captions. He just does later, that sort of thing. Batman is wondering why Jim Gordon summoned him, but it wasn't him. It was actually Hellboy. And Hellboy is kind of saying, of course, what he's saying. This is kind of his thing. Nazis, the occult, that sort of stuff. And Batman's kind of like, who's this going to be helpful for? He said, for both of us, right? So the person said October. He has some dealings with these guys, right? And he said, Batman thinks it's kind of electrical energy, but Hellboy's trying to say it's magic, right? And this is one of the things. We have a mood piece. We have a flashback panel that if you read the dialogue, then there's a shoot back to a panel, which is kind of a flashback panel, right? Right. So then Batman's still iffy as they're going through the bits, but then he says, "Hey, are you coming?" So they go on their, first detective story together, right? So we go to this. They go to this one guy, and he's like, "Nope, this is a scammer right here," but he wants the real information. And Batman, the stuff in here that James Robinson does is really great. There's some really good bits here how Batman chasing down these guys, and they lead him to the next person, right? And getting the right information, but he's skeptical about the information. And that's a good part of having a good detective story. Someone giving you information and trying to weed through whether it's true or not, right? So then runs into this guy, Giovanni. Giovanni sends him to someone else, right? And says Morty is the real guy, and he runs into Morty, and he's already scared and running out and left the building and ran into. This is kind of a throwback to a Neil Adams thing, where someone escaped and trying to run away, but instead of Batman, it's Hellboy, right? So to give information, these Nazis are going to be at this airfield, right? And they're like, and this is a nice, good mood piece right here because Hellboy kind of says, maybe maybe you didn't need me. Maybe you could have just done it yourself. And Batman says, no. He said, I'm glad you're here, right? And he said, the magic they're using, you know. He said, if he only had time, right? And so they jump into the fray and they have a plan, right? And they call Batman and the devil. And they get into this big fight. This big Jack Kirby action fight in a Batman story and the detective story. And as they go, the Nazis are trying to escape. And they're trying to escape with Ted Knight over here. And he hears a spell. So Hellboy's like, I got to stop this spell. And Batman, you take care of the plane. And this is a real cool bit here. Because the plane takes off. Batman hooks a line. But at the same time, these nice October guys, he jumps down on Batman and knocks him down from the line. So it's really cool because it's not playing to the fact that Batman's staying on. He couldn't hold on. And we lose Ted Knight. So at the same time, the Nazis are doing their thing. They're doing this chant that's going to open up a vacuum. And Hellboy's almost stopped them. But then when he stabs him and there's a blood sacrifice, the vacuum opens up. Hellboy says, Batman, grab hold of something, anything. And he says, I hope I can. And Hellboy is closer to the vacuum. He's trying to hold on. And then he said, he can't hold on much longer. But Batman has got a line. He's holding Hellboy. You see this, the tension is pulling. And it's going into, for effect, this Nazi insignia. And luckily it stops before it pulls them in also, right? So Batman's like, all right, we're going to get a plane together. With our luck, going to the Amazon jungle, he'll be a little bit there quicker. But at the same time in Gotham, all these children are being kidnapped, so Batman can't be there for it. So Batman is like, you have the plane, but Hellboy won't be going alone. You'll actually be going with the new Starman, which is, I think, Jack Knight. And this was cover is done by Tony Harris, who is James Robinson's partner on what's the name? Starman. Starman was a big book for comics. I think they allowed them to close off the story, right? But we still have Mignola art, right? So Batman sees them off. Obviously, Jack is struggling because his father's been taken. And this is some nice. The interesting part about Mignola's work. There's not heavy duty acting. It's just people in the right places for the right thing. And at the same time, it just sort of works. So if you look at stuff that Perez does, or Byrne, and that sort of thing, his thing is mood, and actually, the stuff just works. So it's not something where you get to see facial expressions or that sort of thing. It's a lot of mood, but it still sort of works. And the person doing a dialogue, or even Mignola himself, doesn't really have to kill himself while he's doing it, right? So we get a little refresher. So Jack knows what's going on, and he's worried about his father, and he's not sure why the Nazis have taken him, right? So Jack takes a rest, and Hellboy says he doesn't sleep much. So, and I can't say from memory if who is it? James Robinson does a lot of what do you call that? Captions. But for this, it just has the same feel that a Hellboy comic book has. There's a little more in the detail and sort of the writing. Some of the stuff that he's adding about when they were casing some guys. Here's a little bit about it. He's cracking his neck, so proving me wrong. A little more personality in this, and putting on the jacket type of deal, putting on his glasses. So thankfully, Mignola's proved me wrong. He can do character even in this kind of what is it, Chiaroscuro style, and kind of tone, like pull away a lot of the stuff for a lot of mood, right? So as they go, Hellboy's like, I really don't want to jump out of a plane and fall, and said, not tonight, right? But they're going after this guy, which is what's this guy? Otto Dance. We saw him in the last. He was getting on the plane with Ted Knight, right? So as they go, they immediately get hit, right? So Hellboy's like, geez, that's normal, but then Starman's able to catch him, and they have to go a little bit further because having a light on kind of sent the easy way for them to get hit. Right? So they slowly going through the jungle, and look, having this cool sort of jungle, it's like Wally Wood eat your heart out with the mood in here. So it's really cool, and then the Nazis are here, and Hellboy's pretty mad, and of course we get another splash similar to the one with Batman and Hellboy, and they just take out these characters, and you realize they have these goggles on, so Hellboy says they're sensitive to light, so Jack takes them out. All right, so now they're heading over to this village, all right, and I love this when they say tie him up. This in his style is like everything kind of works, right? So this crazy town, they got this obviously the gun that shot them, and this weird thing that's going on here, right? So they have one Nazi captured, and they're gonna get all information that they can out of him, and it still has some Nazi some swastikas on flags on the town, right? So they start talking about the Knights of October, and they're gonna bring out this kind of what's that character? They're gonna bring out one of those creatures that are those classic Hellboy creatures that are always in the book, and bringing out the Lovecraftian elder god, right? And while they've drugged Ted Knight, he's going to use his knowledge of science and his powers to actually bring this creature back, to revive him, right? Now, because they were what's the name? They get into it that Ted Knight doesn't believe in kind of mysticism and any of that stuff, even though he was around the Spectre and other characters. They don't care about that. They drugged them, and they're using them to their wishes, right? And this cannon is drawing out the Elder God, right? And then Hellboy's had it, so he just knocks him out. So then he has a plan, right? But they don't tell you the plan, right? So then they see the light to direct them one way, right? And they're ready to shoot at the light as they did earlier, but he comes from a different direction, right? So that's a cool effect here. They know that they're coming, but Dan's doesn't care. He's gonna kill Ted Knight for all the people and during the war that he defeated. And Hellboy is doing a reconnaissance mission to get Ted Knight out, knocks out this guy, and runs out with Ted Knight. He said, I got your father. The Nazis are still there, and they escape, but they got to figure out how to revive him. Hellboy always has stuff on him, so he has this antitoxin, and Ted is back. And then this always to add mood. Sometimes he'll draw a creature from there, from the area, just to kind of add a mood to the page, right? Some animal looking on, right? So at the same time, oh, sorry, I went too fast. So now they kind of go through. He said, hey, I couldn't, I was kind of trapped. I couldn't say anything, but I saw something that they put in the wrong way, so you could kind of use that to stop it. So then now Jack thinks, hey, we're gonna attack the Elder God first, and he's like, no. So one of the cool things that James Robinson does is these red captions is actually Hellboy telling you the plan. They show you it, but they get you to what the plan is, not on this page, but as it goes along. So we see Jack Knight, attacking the creature to weaken it, and at the same time, Hellboy is going to run interference, right? But I don't think the plot goes in, so there's still some more. And then what then? So it's kind of a cool way to kind of give you what the plan is instead of spending all the pages trying to explain that. So he's a definite master of the art form as far as dialogue and captions. And Hellboy's here. Instead of they're on the building, he destroys the building that they're on. And now they're supposed to swap roles. All right? And then and he said, why can't I do it? He said, because he doesn't know the ancient language, right? Lemurian, right? So he says the ancient language to get rid of the monster, right? And it's time for them to get out. And they get out, a big explosion, it's all gone, and then we see Batman traveling into the area, right? So there you have it. A fun sort of crossover. I don't know if it's actually remembered or any of these Hellboy crossovers, but at the same time, if you were on this wave of Hellboy, you have to imagine that Dark Horse already had a mascot, and the mascot was Concrete. And then even though I think stuff like Sin City and John Byrne's X-Men sold more than Hellboy, Hellboy became like Dark Horse's mascot. So at the same time, while the way Mike Mignola was making the big bucks was they'd have a mini series that would come out, and then they would have the trade, and the trade would do well. It would cost less for them to print, so the more the money would go to the creators, obviously in Dark Horse, and then the next thing would follow the same thing. So I'm not sure that any of them sold extremely well, but they did very well in the trades. So I can't say that for all of them. I think for X-Men it probably worked the same way, but Dark Horse was very much interested in doing Hellboy, and then of course Dark Horse had the mask, and they also had Hellboy as a movie. So they had these things that was buzzing and hitting the Hollywoods. They also had a lot of other creators who didn't get the big success of Sin City or Hellboy. And then later on they had another mascot, which would be the Ghoul, but Hellboy stayed in there. So, and I think after this point, Mike Mignola was still doing, so to give you some last bit tidbits, it's at this point, Hellboy was a character was kind of moving on, like a wandering character. But Mignola had still a few miniseries left to do, right? So that's when he started enlisting other artists to do miniseries. Some of the continuing Hellboy stories, which were done by Duncan Fedrego, and of course, what they're making a movie now of, The Crooked Man, which I'd seen Richard Corbin's work, and it was not it was cartoony and realistic at the same time, and I definitely and everyone was extra muscular. So in my mind, I'm not sure that I knew it was going to work, but he did Macoma, which was I love that miniseries. I think it was a one shot. It was a one shot or two shot. Maybe it was a two shot. No, it was a one shot issue, and was it two? I could be wrong. I think it's a two shot, but it was a great story, and it led to Mignola and Corbin doing work together up till Richard Corbin went and started doing his own stuff again. He did the Rat God, some other stuff, but it was his Hellboy stuff was very nice. So I had one last thing I wanted to say, but I think that's about it. We have the Crooked Man here. I was planning on doing the Seed of Destruction next, but I think depending on demand, which the demand is for Crooked Man, and I'll spoil everything by reading you the comic book, but it'd be interesting to see how things played out. I was okay with the last movie, even though Hellboy was a little more grunge as far as his look, but I think the audience they have to let Ron Perlman go. It kind of hurts that they didn't do the Hellboy 3 with Ron Perlman and Hellboy. I don't think Ron Perlman wanted to do Hellboy without Guillermo del Toro. But as long as Mike Mignola is still involved in the Hellboy books, I think if you're fans of Hellboy, we should support. I can't answer my partner's reason why do another Hellboy. What am I supposed to do? I'm just supposed to accept it and enjoy. Spinner Rack out.